Welcome to Stat Kings Live, NFL Edition Week 6. We had a big game last night between the Colts and the Texans. It was an Andrew Luck show from beginning to end. Pretty much 33-28, the Colts won the game. Arian Foster looked good on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Andre Johnson caught a touchdown, was a pretty good catch. What'd you think,
about
Frank?
that T.Y. Hilton?
Unbelievable.
PPR machine.
Absolutely, 200 yards and over 200 yards and a touchdown. He had a big week. The Colts won again. They're looking pretty good this year, but we're going to go into the injury report. What do you got, Frank?
Yeah, Tony, a couple injury updates. We have Mike Evans. He looks good to go versus Baltimore. Vincent Jackson, he will play Week 6 versus Baltimore. Reggie Bush probably won't play at Minnesota, Tony. That could be a problem for Detroit.
Absolutely.
However, they do have Joique Bell, who should play Week 6 in Minnesota. Probably will receive some more of the action. You have Calvin Johnson, probably won't play in Minnesota Week 6.
That's
no
big.
Megatron.
It's big with him out.
A.J. Green won't play Week 6. Another big loss.
Carted off the field this week. So.
Derek Carr expected to start versus San Diego. Zach Stacy should play Monday night versus San Francisco. And finally, we have Jordan Reed, who should play Week 6 at Arizona.
And he's a big player. He played last year, and Jordan Reed's a tight end that you could throw in there. He's good. He could be a factor here going forward. Going right into the show now, we got quarterback, best play on the board for the money. I have Joe Flacco, $12,102 at Tampa Bay. He's averaging 15.8 points per game. Here's the reason I like this guy this week. I know he's kind of digging deep for a little basically grasping for straws. But I do like Flacco at that price. Like I said, $12,102. He's playing a Tampa Bay defense that's giving up 292 yards through the air. That's 30th in the league. They're giving up 31.2 points a game, 412 yards overall a game. Those are all pretty much last in the league. Tampa Bay has been just terrible against all pretty much offenses, but I think that Flacco has in a great spot this week. Baltimore has a lot of weapons. Steve Smith Sr. is looking great. Torrey Smith has looked better the last few weeks. I think he could come on. He's been non-existent until then. Justin Forsett coming out of the backfield. I think that gives Flacco a lot of options. I think the screens to Forsett could be trouble, and especially throwing downfield to Smith and the Smith brothers, basically. I think he's going for 300 yards and a TD plus, 2 TDs this week. I really like him at that price, $12,102. I couldn't pass him up against the Tampa Bay defense.
Some bold predictions there, Tony. More and more, Russell Wilson's demonstrating that he's not just a leader on the field, but he's a fantasy football star. At $14K, Russell Wilson's going up against Dallas. Tony. I picked him. I really like him this week. Each week on StatKings.com, Wilson has earned at least 17 plus points, including a performance last week against Washington. That was enough to pretty much elevate any team if you had him in there. And he 34.24 fantasy points is a lot, and again would have helped your lineups. While the Cowboys have allowed just the 11th fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, they haven't really been challenged with quarterbacks. Austin Davis, if you recall, Tony, he let them up with 3 touchdowns in Week 3. So I like Russell Wilson and his dual threat capability. He can hurt you with his arm, he can hurt you with his legs. You got to take him for $14K against Dallas.
And his running ability is pretty special. I mean, 122 yards on the ground last week and a touchdown. If he can give you 50 and a TD every week on the ground, that could be trouble.
And if you need more assurance for Russell Wilson, he's averaged 17.5 fantasy points in his past 8 home games.
Wow.
So something to look at there.
He is a home machine. His quarterback rating at home is much better than his quarterback rating on the road. So you take him at home, especially this week. I think that's a good pick, Frankie. Going on to running back, I got Brandon Oliver. Now this guy's going to be at the bottom of your board. $6,800 at Oakland. You scroll all the way down, you'll find him. You're never going to get him at this price again. There's a quote from Antonio Gates this week. He says Oliver is Sproles with more power. That's a big thing to say, especially from a guy that was non-existent 2 weeks ago. You didn't even know who this guy was. He comes in last week, 23 touches versus the Jets in Week 5. He had 182 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's playing Oakland this week. Oakland is terrible, absolutely putrid. Their defense is giving up 158 yards rushing a game. That's 31st in the league. I think that Oliver comes out with a big game this week, running and receiving. I think he has 100 total yards at least and a TD. I think you're good for go. That's put that in the books. And I think $6,800 is a price that you can't pass up.
You're playing a little Nostradamus here. Look in your crystal ball.
My crystal ball looks good this week. I think he does. He's in there.
Well, I picked him as well. Oliver,
Yes.
6.8K. It's too good to pass up
can't
on.
pass it up.
It's not gonna be there anymore that low. I think he's gonna have a really good game. Rivers is gonna control the offense. He's gonna handle Oakland, and you're gonna have Oliver who's gonna complement the pass. You do have Ronnie Brown, who was signed by the Chargers this week. I don't see him having a pivotal role in the offense. I see him more of as a reserve, coming off the sidelines, maybe some third downs to
Pass blocking, yes.
to give Oliver some rest, but nothing aside from there. But if Oliver for you poses too much of a gamble, because remember, the Chargers could jump ahead in this pretty quickly, and you could get some of those reserves off the bench, like a Sean Drones or a Ronnie Brown.
Yes.
You might want to go with maybe a Andre Williams at Philly this week, or maybe a Matt Forte at Atlanta if you're willing to put up some more money. Those are a couple other options there.
With Rashard Jennings going down last week, I think Andre Williams could be a good play. I like that a lot. I like Forte too. Those could be two good plays, especially if you don't like this guy, Oliver. I think that both those guys could be good, put up some good points.
Sure.
Moving on to wide receiver, I have Julio Jones, the big man. He's playing Chicago at home this week. He's $12,976. I know he's on the top of the list, but I think this is a week to start him. He's been much better at home. In his last 5 home games, he's averaging 130 yards receiving. That's pretty special. He's on pace for 128 catches, 1,767 yards, and 10 TDs. For the season. That's a monstrous season in itself. The Chicago defense has really not had any trouble with quarterbacks other than Aaron Rodgers, because they play pretty much nobody. E.J. Manuel, terrible. Colin Kaepernick throws the ball 100 miles an hour even if he's 5 yards from the guy. Geno Smith, horrible. Aaron Rodgers, 302 yards and 4 TDs is what they put up against Chicago. And Cam Newton, really non-existent this year for passing the ball. So I really like Matt Ryan to exploit this Chicago defense just like Aaron Rodgers did, and throw it at especially Julio Jones. He's going to have a big game, 100 yards plus, a TD plus. That's what I like from this guy this week.
Falcons could take flights through the air, no question. I think that's plausible. Emmanuel Sanders for the Denver Broncos is my pick. He's playing New York, who's not demonstrated much competence against the pass this year. 8.4K. He's averaging 15.5 fantasy points per game. If you're looking for a receiver who is going to give you a return on your PPR investment, it's Emmanuel Sanders. Just like T.Y. Hilton, this guy's right up there. He's a PPR machine. He's reeled in at least 6 receptions in each of his games. He had a season-high 11 in Week 3 against Seattle. The guy reels in passes. Peyton Manning loves him. And if Peyton Manning loves him, then you want him on your fantasy team, because I'll tell you what, this guy is going to light up the Jets team, I believe, this Sunday. And a fun fact, Sanders posted a 55-yard touchdown versus the Jets last season. So I think that a reprisal of that could happen, especially with Peyton Manning coming off his Bronco high horse career high 479-yard game last week. But if that pick doesn't suit your fancy, I'll tell you what, there's a couple other guys that you might try this week. You got Vincent Jackson versus Baltimore, Kendall Wright versus Jacksonville, or Alshon Jeffrey at Atlanta. Try that on for size.
I like all those. Vince Jackson's been great the last few weeks now that
Yes.
Mike Glennon's in there, so that could
Really
be
is.
he could be a factor. We're going to move on to tight end. My tight end is a big guy on the board. Again, just like Julio Jones at receiver, I'm taking a big guy on the board at tight end. $11,459. It's Julius Thomas. He's been a TD machine this year. He's got 7 TDs already. He's Peyton Manning's security blanket now. It looks like Demaryius Thomas has been kind of non-existent until last week. Now he's back in the fold. But Julius Thomas is the guy that Manning goes to in the red zone. He's at the Jets this week. The Jets have been bottom 10 versus tight ends. The Jets also lead the league in sacks, which gives Peyton Manning a little bit of pressure this week, which means he might have to get that ball out quickly. Like I said, Sanders on those slants, Thomas on the quick outs and quick ins. I like him a lot. I think he exploits the Jets this week and has close to 7 catches, 90 yards, and a TD, and that's going to outscore your $11,459.
Well, I took Greg Olsen, Carolina Panthers. He's done pretty well. He's had a good 2014 campaign to start the season. He's going up against the Bengals, 8.4K. His absences to start the week, they appear to be more precautionary in nature, especially considering a report from Steve Reed this week of the Associated Press. He said that the tight end looked fine during Thursday's warm-ups, so there should be no problems come Sunday. He should remain active in all lineups against the Bengals, again, as I mentioned, who have given up the 3rd most receiving yards, 395, the 3rd most receptions, 33, and the 2nd most fantasy points to tight ends, including 12 yards a catch, Tony, almost.
Wow.
So You got to put it if you're going to put a tight end in against the Bengals. It might as well be Greg Olsen. He's having a great year, as I mentioned. But if you don't want to go with Olsen for whatever reason, you have Owen Daniels at Tampa Bay that might be a good option. You have Jordan Reed if he plays at Arizona, Delaney Walker at Jacksonville, Julius Thomas. I love that play. And finally, you have Heath Miller at Cleveland. All those guys match up pretty well.
All those defenses can't seem to guard the pass, and especially your pick Olsen. He had 2 Ds last week going against one of the worst defenses against tight end Cincinnati. So I really like those plays. Those are all good plays, Frankie. Moving on to kicker, I got Justin Tucker at Tampa Bay, $7,298. Let me tell you about Tampa Bay's defense. Again, giving up 31.2 points a game, 412 yards a game. I think Baltimore moves the ball on these people easy, especially Tampa Bay, being that everybody's given them trouble this year. They really don't have any semblance of a running game whatsoever, so that could extend this game. I think Tucker's going to be in the red zone a lot, and I really like him to score a lot of points this week, especially considering his leg is big. He could hit from 50, 55, even 58 if he needs to, so I like Tucker against Tampa Bay.
Matt Bryant for the Falcons going up against the Chicago Bears and returning this game. 6.9K. He's averaging 7.4 fantasy points per game. Why I like him is the points are going to be scored and the matchup's there. The Bears have already allowed 2 kickers to reach double digits in fantasy points with Dan Carpenter in Week 1 and Nick Folk in Week 3, surrendering a success rate of around 92%.
Wow.
92%. So the ball is going to go through the uprights, and it's going to be in the uprights, I believe. Bryant has made at least 2 field goals in 4 of his past 5 games going back to last year. Other feet worth a kick this week. You have Josh Brown at Philly, Phil Dawson at St. Louis, and Nick Novak at Oakland.
Nick Novak at Oakland, that could be a good start there. I mean, Oakland's horrible. That could be a special play also.
Yes, they are.
Moving on to defense, I have Cincinnati. They're playing Carolina at home. Cincinnati plays great defense at home. Carolina is 30th in the rushing the ball, which means they have no semblance of a running game whatsoever, which means they're going to have to pass. I think Cincinnati can shut them down at home. Carolina's averaging 15 points a game on the road. That's pretty putrid. I think Cincinnati's going to go run heavy this week with Bernard and Jeremy Hill. So I feel like the game should be shortened, especially considering Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill are really effective running backs. It's the biggest punch they've had in Cincinnati in forever. So I think Cincinnati's defense, their offense helps them out, helps their defense out, keeps the offense on the field and the defense off of the field, and that's really going to be the difference with Carolina, especially Cam Newton not being himself, not really running the ball anymore, no running game whatsoever. I think Cincinnati keeps Carolina to under 10, 12 points this week and really exploits them and puts up a lot of points.
Well, the Chargers I picked going up against Oakland, returning to this game. They're at 3.9K. I was actually surprised at how low they're rated, but I don't think that's going to last very long. The Chargers are coming off a 31-0 sinking shutout of the Jets. And they get a favorable road matchup at Oakland. Opposing defenses have combined to score the 7th most fantasy points against them. If the Chargers continue to spark defensive lightning displays, again, they're not going to be at 3.9K anymore. I was really surprised I had to scroll down that far on the stacking side, but I'm sure that's going to change after this week. Adam, and it's lights out.
And I think at Oakland's bad. I mean, they really are. They have no semblance of a running game. They have no passing game whatsoever. Derek Carr is going to play this week.
Right.
I think that's good and bad, obviously, because he's been good and bad in the sense throughout the whole year, but more bad than good. So I like the Chargers, especially against a bad Raiders offense. So
this Chargers team is surprising people this year. They really are offensively and defensively.
It might make a run at Denver. You never know. I mean,
they might.
Could be trouble. So we'll see.
Well, that does it, guys. Remember, do your research and choose your team wisely. If you want to become fantasy sports royalty, I'm Frank Travis. This is Tony Battalucco signing off from Kansas City, Missouri. See you in Week 7.
See you guys.